Welcome to the For the Love of the Game podcast with your hosts, Jefferson Belfort and Brian Hernandez. Brian, how are you doing today?
Man, this is probably one of the best weeks for me in the sense of like I'm looking forward, and the draft is honestly always been like my Super Bowl, being a Knicks fan, just because it's all I ever have to look forward to, and then generally just get disappointed and all that stuff, especially like the draft lottery. But very excited. We're less than a week away. We just got the finals conclusion. There's a lot of really cool stuff happening in basketball. This is when all the movement's about to happen soon. We're getting a lot more rumors. I'm very excited. Jeff, how are you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. I think you have a draft this year you should be very proud of. You're going to be happy. From what I surmise may happen, you should be really happy with what your Knicks do in this draft this year if they follow my methods.
Okay.
I'm happy that, let's first say it. We made it a full season.
Yes.
Our first full NBA season of recording. We ain't stopping. Obviously, there's going to be improvements to our process we're going to take over these months before the next season starts. Just like any other team, got to improve. We got to get better. We love everything that we've been bringing to you guys as listeners, but we also want to hear from you guys and hear what you think we could improve upon. And if you want to drop that in the comments, we would greatly appreciate that.
Yes.
But here's to one successful season. Your prediction came true.
Yes.
And it's going to be a part of our topics today. And I'm happy to go over those and really unpack on them. So
yeah, man, let's get into it. I will say for the listeners, let's not restart, but I did have some of the outro music playing during the beginning, but hey, this is always how it goes, but that's off now. We're good. Let's just keep rolling. We got the magic flowing. I'm ready. But this is what we're talking about. It's always going to be improvements.
It's all good. It's a cold start. That's what it was.
Yes,
exactly. So this is the actual start right now. So the topics that we're going to hit today are our NBA final thoughts. And then we're going to go into our NBA draft mocks. And then from going over the first to 14 picks, all of the lottery picks. And then we'll have a weekly roundup to end the pod today. Brian, are you ready?
Yes, man. I am so ready. Let's go.
Okay. So as of Thursday, January 16th, 2022, the Golden State Warriors solidified themselves as a dynasty, winning their fourth championship in 8 seasons. Steph Curry winning his first Finals MVP. Draymond Green being able to get out of that rut. And I'm sure all of the listeners and everyone that viewed noticed that Draymond is hitting those backpack threes. And, once Draymond starts hitting threes, the game's over in your mind. So kudos to them on winning that championship. Any first thoughts that you have, Brian, that you want to say on the pod?
So yeah, there's a few things. There is one, it definitely feels good, like you mentioned, that at the beginning of the year we had some predictions, and when it wasn't very cool to predict the Golden State Warriors to win, when everyone was going over and going crazy about the Lakers, I very proudly was like, Lakers, no. Warriors, that's the team to look out for. My prediction as though why the Warriors were going to win, not exactly correct. It's kind of like when you solve a math problem. You did it completely wrong, but you got the right answer. That's how I feel in this scenario where I thought the Warriors were going to be extremely good because of Klay Thompson coming back. Gonna look like I didn't think he was gonna skip a beat. I thought he was gonna look extremely good, and then you just have everyone else on that team, and it just looked like it was gonna be too hard for them to lose. Klay Thompson came back, not exactly the same player. Definitely has his moments where he does look like it, but generally did not perform at the level as he was in the past. So, exactly. Very excited. The Celtics, man, I even a couple weeks ago and throughout this entire time, I've been expecting like a 7-game series just because of just like how tough the Celtics have been this entire time. I wonder if there's any like if you look at the route that they took to get to the finals, took away so many heavy hitters, did all this stuff. I wonder if they got a little bit gassed at the end because especially Jayson Tatum. Jayson Tatum, just not the guy that they needed him to be. We've been having the discussion about superstar, not a superstar. I think I'm like ready to like push him down to that level where Jimmy Butler is in my in my somehow rankings, just because of he has had those moments where, especially that Nets series where Jimmy Butler looked absolutely spectacular, and that the whole Golden State Warriors series, not really much. There's a lot of hit and miss games during the Miami series, and just a lot of inconsistency. And before I go even further, Jeff, I'll let you come in and give us some thoughts as well.
Yeah, so my first thoughts about this is that you know, like I said congratulations to what the Warriors were able to do. You mentioned it, the construction of what we thought would be a championship team for the Warriors was vastly different in the beginning of the season, but still able to achieve what they were going to achieve, what you thought they were going to achieve. I actually chose the Lakers in the beginning of the season, so obviously I was wrong. but 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 it still goes down in my mind that what they were able to do was quite impressive. Being able to assemble the likes of what they put together. A lot of people are putting down another factor on this team that has not been a factor of this team for the last 3 years in Kevin Durant. But I think that's taking away from what the Warriors were able to do. There's a reason why Bob Myers is that, yeah, I think that's his last name.
Yeah, yeah.
Bob Myers and is viewed as one of the best GMs in the league and what he's able to do. And Joe Lacob giving him the ability to have the space and the place to build out a team like this is why they were able to construct such a well-rounded and great team that was ready for this type of opportunity. Adding guys like Jordan Poole, who was not someone that was on leaderboards when he was coming out. Being able to, and this is like thanking him for stuff he's already done and already saw a championship for. But the trio, these guys were all guys that were good, but no one before their first championship thought that this team was going to be the team that they are currently constituted as. So, you give them a lot of props for being able to do that. But the biggest thing that I think that comes with this team now is that they are going to now have a core that is intact for the foreseeable future. It's important to see how they hold everything together, and see if it's sustainable to have all of these players stay the course with them, or see if they decide, there's slight improvements. Every team, even if we win a championship, has question marks the next season. They're going to have to address some question marks. The first one that I always think of is that center spot. Some parts of the series we saw weaknesses where Kevin Looney just does not fit the best, but nevertheless, they were able to win the championship. And then on the Celtics side of things, and this is not to demean anything that the Celtics did or call them out, because they were able to make it all the way to the finals. And a lot of the times, people got to remember how lucky you had to be to get to this level of competition as the NBA Finals. And when I say lucky, I always preface luck with, and this is something I say even in my own life, is that when people think that you're lucky, the formula to being lucky is being afforded the ability to be lucky because of the perseverance you put into the success that you're looking to garnish, right? So the Warriors put together and crafted something over the years that was able for them to be lucky. So has the Celtics. The ability to have all of these guys ready and, vying for the same things at the right time is the reason why they made it to the finals. But does it make me not say you have to, look back at everything with context? You do. I think you look back, you look at a Nets team that they played, a team that is actually on the opposite side of the spectrum of being unlucky. They lost a star player in James Harden this season. Kyrie missed X amount of games for things I do not have to explain because everyone knows at this point. Kevin Durant missed a substantial amount of time. And then there was just no cohesion with the team due to this. And then obviously the external factor of now bringing in not superstar, a star in Ben Simmons that, for 2 to 3 months hanged a cloud over the organization of whether or not he was going to play. And ultimately he did not play. So that even plays a part into it. Then you go into the Bucks. Bucks have their own situation where they lose their second best player in Middleton, and they're able to still make it to 7 games through the sheer awesomeness of their superstar player in Giannis. And then we go into the Eastern Conference Finals. I think that was probably the most evenly matched matchup they had to go with because they're playing a team that is quite similar to what they are as a team. And they found a way to be better because the difference is that the Heat have one star or one traditional star, and the Celtics have two. And that's what seemed to be the biggest difference at the end of it, right? So their journey to the finals was still impressive. It was impressive to see them win that game one as well too. They played valiantly, but the disappearing act that we saw out of Jayson Tatum is something that has to be talked about and mentioned. But do I think that this puts a dark cloud over his career? No. I think there's still more for him to go into and grow his game and lead into that maturation right into his prime, as he's only just 24.
That is absolutely insane that he's only 24 and then Jaylen Brown's 25. Like, that's your future going forward. Yeah.
Brian, I can play devil's advocate.
Okay.
And say he's only 24. Jaylen Brown's only 25. Marcus Smart's, I think, actually a lot older than those guys, like 27. 27, 28 or something of
Let's
that.
see. He's 28.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So he's in a different space,
Yeah.
you know. But I think devil advocate playing on this one is this is the same sentiment that we had for the 2012 OKC Thunder, you know,
Yeah.
is that this is such a relatively young group. They're going to figure it out. They're going to win championships and they're going to keep this core together. That leads into my first question of today on this is Jaylen Brown, as stellar as he looked in this finals and how abysmal Jayson Tatum looked in this finals. I'm sorry to bring this back up, but are these two guys a good fit for one another? And should they consider either amplifying it by adding someone else or and continuing with these two guys as the core, or should they do a radical change and see how much value you could get in trading one of these pieces to get a better situation for this organization? What do you think, Brian?
I think so. One, there definitely is the thing where they are a little bit too similar. Like, I don't know if there's anyone that can really look at these two guys and think that they're completely different or anything like that. But I don't think similar is necessarily a bad thing. Just because of, if you look at them, what did they do well? They're really good. They're both really good at scoring and they're both really good at defense. Like, these are just things. I mean, it's at the most basic level. You want that from everyone. They have size. Like, if I were to go and trade one of them, even regardless of how good Jaylen Brown was this entire season, I think he would still be the guy to go, just because of, we look at the ceiling of where Jayson Tatum can go and where he did go earlier in these playoff series. And I think you have to bet on that guy. If you were to trade one, definitely Jaylen. I would look to, yeah, just try to, it's hard to try to get someone that you think that could fit with Jayson Tatum in the sense of like maybe better than Jaylen Brown. I don't know. I would have to see like what's out there at the moment. I would kind of like them just to like run it back. Like, let me get these same guys, just because it did work so well. And like what I was talking about, both these guys are extremely good on defense. We kind of saw this was the number one defensive team in the entire NBA. And throughout a lot of these series, they locked down a lot of the best players. So I'm not mad if you keep these two. What do you think?
Yeah, so I agree at this point now because they've proven it.
Yeah.
And they've shown that they're exceptional when with how they play, right? Obviously, the ceiling is a little bit higher for Jayson Tatum than it is for Jaylen Brown. So if you are to move one, I do agree it is going to have to be Jaylen Brown, but it's about Jayson Tatum finding consistency in his game. And that's been the biggest question mark on his whole career now at this early part of his career is that when is he going to find that consistency? And as much as we say he's 24, he's still 5 years into his career. And that's when you start to ask yourself, like, well, maybe he isn't going to find consistency in his career. So what is the Celtics going to do to enable or help with him finding that consistency in his, I mean, finding pieces that help the fact that at moments he will be inconsistent, you know? And I remember there was a trade proposal that ironically was something that was thrown around before they blew off um, uh, in the early part of the season. And that trade was looking at looking at as with the Hawks as a potential trade destination with Jaylen Brown and moving pieces like DeAndre Hunter, Kevin Herter, Johnson, and then like two picks. I think that now Jaylen Brown has proved that one of these names can change. And
Yeah.
I think that if salaries match, which I don't think they all ultimately do, but I think if it's an off-season trade, obviously I wouldn't do it this off-season because
Yeah.
you're coming right off. You're coming right off of a finals appearance. Not fair to blame Jaylen Brown for that. But let's say they don't find any consistency next year to the level of what they did this year. Yeah, I would say switch the one name that I would switch on that. And like I said, if it's payday, it's gonna change a little bit. But I would switch Hunter and put in what's his name, the power
Which one?
forward.
Anyeka
Uh,
Kangu?
uh,
I don't know.
no. John Collins, because
Oh,
he's
John
been
Collins.
teased
Got it.
as someone that they could potentially move. And I think that he helps right the ship a little bit with this what the Celtics have as well too. He's has the ability to stretch a little bit more too. You can move. I think it's a little, it's going to be a little bit. I wouldn't say confusing, but it would be question mark
Finals
as
and
to what will Horford be in a year from now, being that he is 35. But I think that he would be a great replacement um, in that type of trade. But I would say, let's say, trade deadline more than next season. If they don't look good by the trade deadline,
Yeah.
a trade like that makes a lot of sense to me. John Collins. If you find a way to get Hunter in that trade, get Hunter in that trade. Or I think it would be a switch between Hunter or Kevin Herter, and then get us some picks, and that I think that helps a lot because it alleviates some of that pressure on Jayson Tatum having to be the primary defender on the team's best players, the
Hmm.
opponent's best players, allowing Hunter to play into his game. Kevin Herter obviously is not the same type of defender as Hunter, so I will preface that and say that I would rather Hunter. And then Josh Collins, also not a slouch on defense. Also, explosive guy that honestly I think is something that the Celtics actually lack. You saw a lot of points in the game where the Celtics ball IQ just was a little off,
Hmm.
where you saw White was just throwing alley hoops to Robert Williams and expecting him to be like Dwight Howard or something,
Yeah.
jump over three guys, standing vertical, and like catch the alley or something. And I'm like, I don't know what you thought was gonna
Yeah.
happen there, but that clearly wasn't the answer.
An
But
injured Robert
um,
Williams too.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. So it didn't make a lot of sense to see some of that happen. But I think if they do consider any trade, I think that's one that helps them a lot with team construction over having similarities on their roster.
I don't mind it. I think especially with if you're able to get John Collins, Hunter specifically, I think in this scenario, like I value Hunter way more than Herter. And then if you can get some of those first round picks, could definitely be a little bit more fair. Just because especially like if there really is kind of any time to trade Jaylen Brown, like this is probably one of the better times. He looked absolutely fantastic. His value is at his absolute probably maybe not as high as is gonna be, but one of the highest points, especially where it was the beginning of the season. I would not mind it at all. What I think would really help for the Celtics, I would like to see them get like a point guard more. Like just like I don't know how they get it, who's the point guard available or anything like that. That's what I would kind of like to see a little bit more. But if they made that trade, I would not mind that at all. I would not mind that at all. But at the same time, I kind of think about it. I'm like, if I think about like Jaylen Brown, Jayson Tatum, like they already been playing together all these years. They kind of have that. They know how they work. Like I guess it's a safer option, just to stay in pat.
Yeah. No, I agree. The biggest thing is, do you think, like, as the Celtics, do you start to think that is this at best what we look like, and
Yeah.
that's where my questions come from, because this is a team that's consistently been in the Eastern Conference Finals, been knocking on the door of a finals.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but when do you say, okay, we got to pull the plug? Is the question, because you brought these guys, like the
Yeah.
guys that they have. It's not like they it's a whole bunch of new guys. Yes, there is some new guys
Yeah.
in the fold, but like they really brought back the band to see if they
They
could do
did.
it again, and that's how they went to the finals this year. And makes you think, okay, so at best, in my mind at least, you think at best this is what we look like, currently constituted in this way. So I agree. You don't have to go crazy
Yeah.
and move Jaylen Brown. I think that if you're the Celtics, and this is where it feels like kind of like and I'm going to switch to baseball for this comp, but it feels kind of like when Derek Jeter became the owner of the Marlins, and then miraculously, the Yankees were able to get Giancarlo Stanton, right?
Yeah.
Like it's kind of like feeling like picture perfect this situation for the Celtics, for them to see what happens with the Jazz, see if they implode, and then start asking questions about what's up with Mike Conley. Because I think Mike
Yeah.
Conley could be a good fit for this team. Um, I don't know what you do. What Marcus, do you start him? Do you push him to the bench? My biggest
Mhm.
problem is I don't want to move Time Lord out of the starting lineup.
Yeah.
But if you move Time Lord out of the lineup, I think that's a better small ball fit in having Horford as the five. I guess Tatum would be the four, Jalen would be the three, and then Marcus would be the two, where
Mhm.
it's more of the role that he fits into, and then you have Mike Conley being the one. But Time Lord, time and time, no puns intended, has showed you that there's a reason why he was in consideration for Defensive Player of the Year at some points in this
Yeah.
season. So I don't know. It's going to be an interesting summer to see what they do or
Yeah.
what they consider. But I think Mike Conley could definitely be someone on the top of their list of like sitting and watching what happens in the Utah situation.
Yeah. I actually really like the Mike Conley thought process there. I think that's like a really perfect and kind of seamless fit. I'm not, yeah, but like I guess I go back to like you mentioned a couple times of like, oh, is this the most that what this team can get? And it's like, or I think about it, if this is the most the team can get, like I still think this is a championship caliber team. Like I think if if they executed a little bit better, if things fell their way, like we could just be talking about the Boston Celtics as the champions right now. If Jayson Tatum showed up at some of these games, like we could this could be a different outcome. That's where like I think they have the right pieces. I think it's really just about the execution now, and this is where it's always scary when you have a bunch of young players. Even though they did make a Eastern Conference Finals before a couple years ago, when you have younger players like this, they generally would make mistakes. And as we saw, Jayson Tatum, the most career turnovers in the playoffs in general, with 100 or something. Like, we see these mistakes happen, and that's where like the experience really comes into play. So hey, they made it once. I think they can make it again. Is it going to be easy for them to make it again? No shot, especially when every other team is improving and getting better. So definitely a lot to see there.
Agreed.
Do you want to move
All right,
on?
so moving on. Moving on to the next part of this topic is obviously with this fourth championship ring for Steph Curry, first finals MVP. He's moving up the ranks. He's moving up the ranks on the top 10 greatest players of all times list. But there's two current players that I don't know if they should feel slighted. I don't know if they should feel or if they should just feel like, you know what? That's motivation right there for this situation. But I guess it's time to pose the question. Who do you think, Brian, because of Steph Curry's greatness in this finals, legacy is impacted more by this finals? Is legacy is impacted more by this finals? LeBron James, Kevin Durant.
So, I was doing a lot of thinking about this, and I am going to go with Kevin Durant. And I know what everyone's talking about online. And you mentioned a little bit earlier of like, there definitely is a lot of downplaying of what Kevin Durant brought to this team. But I think this kind of goes back to the Warriors when he was there. But it goes back to even the thought process of before they got Kevin Durant. It's like they never really needed him. Of course, if you give right now the Brooklyn Nets, if you had Kyrie Irving, if you have Kevin Durant, if you got LeBron James, do they need LeBron James? No. But like, would it be amazing for them? Like, or just to get any superstar? Like, yeah, of course. If you could continue to rack up the best players possible, that's amazing. But like, that was already a championship caliber team. You get Kevin Durant. Now it's hands down, you guys are always going to win. When you lose Kevin Durant, it's not a hands down you're going to win. And we saw like they went through a couple of years where there's a lot of injuries and all this other kind of stuff that really brought them to not be like a good team then. But like we see right now, team's healthy again. Even with Klay Thompson still kind of like ramping back up, and will he ever be the same? Who knows? But they're still able to pull it off. They're still able to get a championship. And you see the comparisons on Twitter of people like, oh, he was between Kevin Durant is between Harrison Barnes and Andrew Wiggins. Like, it's hard. It's hard to like, for me to like see Kevin Durant not be hurt by this. And when I look at the LeBron side, it's like LeBron's 37 now. Like we all see LeBron. He's amazing. LeBron's still an amazing player. It's surprising at 37 how he still is, but he's going through so many injuries at this point of his career. Is he the same kind of dynasty that like the Warriors were? Like, no. I mean, we saw him do some pretty crazy stuff with Miami at the time, and even with Cleveland when he had Kyrie. But to me, this doesn't really affect LeBron so much, just because in my opinion it's more like his career is kind of the high times are kind of already gone. I'll be surprised if LeBron wins another championship as him being as like the main guy, if he doesn't like ring chase kind of a la Kevin Durant. I'll let you go.
So I would say and I was the one to pose this question. I would like to say that it's a little bit of, for me, it's obviously, I'm leaning more towards Kevin Durant and on this one. But I would say that I would say that there's a piece of it that both of them hit for. And the reason why I say a piece of them that's hit by this is that when you really think about it, about the Warriors, really, um, I think as time passes by, and I might get hate for this one, but as time passes by, we start to realize that Draymond and Clay were more quasi stars than they truly were stars on their own regards if they weren't a part of the Warriors
It's fair.
dynasty. But Steph Curry's like level of play is going to translate anywhere if given the opportunity. It seems like, right? And the reason why I say both legacies are impacted by this is that I say that if you look back at what stopped LeBron James, it was those type of dynasties.
Yep.
It was the Spurs that stood in the way of him being able to, in a similar sense, put together a team or join a team as obviously not in the same way that Kevin Durant did because it was already a pre-made team and then he joined, but he joined the team
Yeah.
is the sediment, right? And a team that was constructed with quasi stars and then generational talent beat him twice actually in his career,
Hmm.
so it just goes to show like to then also a second part of his career he has to deal with the same thing is deal with a similar team where I would just say it's the Spurs of the further west
Yeah.
in that sense of where they have quasi stars in my mind and then they're able to also have that generational talent and they're able to beat them and that impacts LeBron because he felt he needed to go and construct a team and to be able to win. But you look at all these teams that you look at these two teams in specific that have the cultures built around that you construct the players and will have a talent. You obviously need talent, like let's
Yes.
put it as that. But we've created a team that if you plug in anyone, it will look like it's extremely easy. But that's why it's so interesting. And I remember there was a time where people thought, hey, LeBron should go to the Spurs. And the sentiment would never be the same in my mind if LeBron ever decided to go to the Spurs. But that same respect, it would I feel like in my mind it would garnish the same feel is that Spurs don't necessarily need a
Yeah.
LeBron James, but what LeBron James brings to the table is just over here, and what they have is right
Yeah.
here, but he's right there, you know?
Yeah.
Like he just puts you he overpours your cup
Yes.
is the saying, you know?
Yeah.
So that's where it takes like in my mind they would have to have like a Tim Duncan okay that, or they would have
Yeah.
a Tim Duncan be all right with the thought process of that, and then that's where I tie in two things, is that specifically with Steph Curry, is that it had to take a lot out of Steph Curry to immediately just say, you know what, we're going to add this guy, or we're going to have this guy be a part of the team. Because
Yeah.
if you, I don't know if you've ever watched Draymond talk about the Hampton Five and how it happened.
I'm not.
And Draymond obviously was a bigger proponent of it than any of the other guys
Hmm.
on the team. And a lot of them thought that he would take away from what they were able to do. So that's what makes it so interesting that people feel that you just add this guy and it's a foregone conclusion,
Yeah.
while the Warriors actually believe it's the opposite when those teams when the team was being constructed, is
Hmm.
that this guy is going to take away from the culture that they built. But it was Draymond that believed that this guy actually enhances some of the stuff that we do. And that's where I think it's a little bit different too, because it's funny if you think about it. If you add a few other stars to that, I don't think that you get the same have the same situation, but we're talking about one or two of the best players in the game. So obviously it's going to feel like that. So now moving further down the line into where I feel that it's an underappreciation of his legacy is why people are going to say that this is taking a hit on Kevin Durant's legacy is that ultimately over those 3 years, there was a shift from being able to tailor all of your things to Steph Curry to now shifting more and more to we go through Kevin Durant, right?
Yeah.
And the players were okay with that. It was the same mindset in my mind that happened with the Miami Heat when Dwayne Wade relinquished the keys so he could play with one of his friends in LeBron James. Is that he knew that of some of that star power that he had was going to be drained to be given to the likes of LeBron to have the keys, right? So by year 3, it almost looked like it was too easy for Kevin Durant that year. And he's the worst part about it was that now he's fielding questions of if he's going to stay or he's going to leave. But this team everyone still knew this team was going to go to the finals because of how good they looked. But Kevin Durant looked like he was in his ultimate prime. And he looked like he could do no wrong on the court. And then, boom, playoffs come, he gets injured.
Yeah.
That's when there was a need for a shift back to, oh, wait, we got to go back to what we were as Warriors before this. And I think that those 3 years kind of doled that down for those guys. And then they realized at this point, we do need him right now because we're just not the team we were in 2015, 2016 because we have someone this good and allow for us, take the foot off the gas type of situation. So ultimately, if you look back at some of even the pressers, some of the players saying how much they needed him to win that series against the Raptors. We're talking about the Raptors, let's be honest. Raptors are a good team, but we're talking about the Raptors, and we're talking about a team that beat LeBron James before. They should have not had issues in that series to the level that they were having. And granted, the Raptors were playing out their minds that year.
Yeah.
And I respect that. But still, this is a 2-time champion. This is a three-time champion at that point. So they should not be complaining to the level that they were at that point in my mind. And I know a lot of people will say, well, Clay went down. Clay went down in game 6. That ultimately was the series clincher, right?
Yeah.
So that's where I say minimizing that period has been a big issue of why I believe now in this part of it for his legacy is being impacted because now people don't even see it as he affected them or changed the way how they played so much that we're not going to give him his flowers for what he was able to do while he was on the Warriors because everyone knew on that team, on the Warriors team, that when he was there was no one better on the court.
Yeah.
And it was clear, and it was abundantly clear, right? But it was, in the words of Stephen A. Smith, it was a soft move to go there. But yes, I agree, is that in short now, is that his career is impacted the most by this because ultimately he decided to leave. But I heard something, and typically there's not a lot of good stuff that comes from the show. But this is the one time I will agree is that something good came from this show is that Molly from First Take was mentioning is Kevin Durant is Stephen A. Smith wanted to do a little introspective thinking with saying that Kevin Durant now has to look into himself and look at what he left and where he's at now. And Molly tried to fight back with that, saying that Kevin Durant ultimately did not know that COVID was going to happen. None of us knew that COVID was going to happen. And that truly changed the whole sentiment, the whole situation and the planning of how these last 3 years have gone. Ultimately, he was injured the first season. The second season, where he may have even had a chance to come back, the biggest pandemic in the world happened. Like,
Yeah,
so you could not expect those type of things.
for
But
sure.
I agree is that his legacy is definitely going to be hampered by this. But also, I think that it's not more of hampering LeBron's legacy. It's just now people that are sitting there that are Steph Curry stands go like this to LeBron James stands go like, I see, we right here,
Yeah.
man, we right
I mean, if anything, I could kind of think about it in the sense of with like LeBron's legacy, this kind of maybe even looks good in the sense of like, yeah, that team is just that good. It's even surprising that LeBron even beat them a few times. Of like that team. Of course, he loses to that team. They're amazing. Yeah, it's amazing. I guess where I wanted to push back on the year three like situation you brought about like Kevin Durant. Yeah, I 100% agree, and I think everyone would agree that Kevin Durant was the best player on that team, and especially when like you do have to shift some things of how you play, and I will agree too that there's a bunch of quasi stars on in Draymond and Clay. Like if you put them in other teams, do they look as good as they do right now? I don't think so. Will they still be good? Yeah, sure, but not at the level they are now. When I think about the year three Kevin Durant of like when he goes down, you could kind of, yeah, of course the team is going to complain and be like, this was our number one guy. They haven't played without him in all this time because Kevin Durant's generally always healthy. If you look at it though, of look how impactful Harrison Barnes was during those years that they won championships with him. Harrison Barnes was yeah, okay. Still, but like you win a
well,
championship.
you're right,
You win it, and then now even look at right now. Do the Warriors actually win the series without Andrew Wiggins? I don't think so. Andrew Wiggins was probably one of the most impactful players there. So that's where I think about like I think yes, Kevin Durant super impactful, but like you don't necessarily need that much firepower. It's like if I think about like a gun, you're getting a bazooka when like maybe an assault rifle would have done the job. Like Kevin Durant is that bazooka. Like it's a little bit overkill. Does it get the job done 100%? But like a normal good player would have done the job, and that's where we're kind of seeing right now, and that's where I kind of feel in the sense of it does like hurt his legacy because he didn't need to be there. But I think about the people that talk about like, oh, if Kevin Durant stayed on the Warriors, like look at what he's missing out. To me, if he stayed on the Warriors the entire time and he never left, I think him as soft the entire time. Like I actually respect the move. I actually respect the move of all right, you know what? Yeah, I got my championship. I did my stuff. Now let me do it myself on a different team and like and try something else. I actually respect that move more than if he would have stayed the entire time. They just win all the championships.
he would have been soft with like, whoa, but he would have been soft with like 6 rings, though.
Exactly. But
Like,
that's what I'm saying. Of like, yeah, but like that's the thing. It's the easy kind of move, and like, well, as soon as Kevin Durant moved to the Warriors, I think everyone was like, oh, okay, that's the championship team. Like that's the team that's gonna win next year, and then they won next year. Like, it's not a surprising thing. And that's where it's to me it was I think it was a soft move that he moved there, and yeah, he would have won all these championships, but like that was obviously just easily the best team by far.
oh my god. Yeah. So I agree. Last part of this conversation
Yeah.
is as they've won their fourth ring, Brian, we see an extended part of this theory of this dynasty. Do you think we're looking at the verge of touching the likes of the Bulls, or even even let's even go a step down. The Spurs are the Bulls in that mindset.
I I do think so. I'm not gonna lie. I'm like looking at this team. They have so much talent and kind of a lot of like untapped talent of like those years when the Warriors were on a down year. They got some pretty crazy picks. They had the number 2 pick and they got James Wiseman. Now, is James Wiseman going to be a super hit or anything like that? I don't know, but like James Wiseman, in my opinion, is better than Kevon Looney. And then you got recently, you just picked up Jonathan Kuminga, who's looking amazing. Jordan Poole's he's actually going to be 23 tomorrow. And then you got Moses Moody, who's also, you just drafted. Andrew Wiggins is only 27. Like, I think and then you have Steph is 34. I don't really think age will affect his career so much just because he doesn't rely on athleticism like that. Steph is actually very quick and still athletic, but doesn't rely on it. Clay is 32. Draymond's 32. I can feel like they have another 2 or 3, and then you still have your young core. Like, that's crazy.
If there's anything that's a question mark, it's just Draymond in my mind. Besides everything else, I think everything falls into order with this team. They don't really need to change anything, but I guess this is the time where it's good to bring up also all of the concerns that the rest of the leagues is having at this point. Is like, you name these guys, when assembled and you look at these guys, all of them, there's a lot of guys that deserve money, and the Warriors are actually going to give all of these guys money too. and this is where some teams feel like the competitive balance is being shifted because of that, because you have a team in one of the biggest markets, one of the bigger markets in the world, where capital is not an issue. You live in Silicon Valley, right?
Yeah.
So capital is definitely not an issue for a team like this, and they are replenishing their return on investments, even if they go over the luxury tax, because they're consistently in the finals, to offset some of the things that they're doing. But I think that a lot of the issues is not really a Warriors issues in that, for my mind. It's more of the salary cap. The salary cap does not accurately project how players should be paid, in my mind, in the league. And that's why sometimes we'll look at a guy that deservingly is supposed to be making market value, and then we look at him like, he shouldn't be making this money because 10 years ago, guys like this didn't make this money. But that's just the going rate for the market now. Guys like LeBron James that are at LeBron James level was not making 50. Well, LeBron, I don't even think makes 50 million, but I'm sure if he wanted to, he could make $50 million. But the other superstars in the same class are near there, are going to make $50 million. So it's really a question of like the salary cap more than anything to me, where I think that the NBA realistically has to expand on how they're allowing for teams to be able, because if they feel that it's unfair that these guys could double what they pay and pay it off comfortably, that's an issue with the NBA more than it is on the Warriors.
Yeah, and I mean, just look at even both these teams that made the finals. Like, how are they built? They were built through the draft. Almost all these players that they ended up drafting, and then it just allows when you draft your own players and you're able to re-sign them into your own cap, like, it allows for these kind of crazy moves like now. And you think about it I mean, I guess it just depends on if the NBA wants teams to continue to build through the draft, or teams to try to, win through free agency or doing some other bigger trades. just because, like, yeah, you look at the Warriors. Steph Curry drafted, Klay Thompson drafted, Draymond drafted. Like they pay so much of these guys, and then it just it allows for these kind of crazy moves. Even when you think about when they got Kevin Durant, they were able to trade Harrison Barnes, who they drafted, and were able to do like that crazy kind of movement there. Most teams kind of don't really have that flexibility. If they didn't,
and this is where it's construction of it's the Warriors are always, like, in my mind, cap wise, 10 steps ahead of most teams
for sure
in my mindset. And the only reason, one of the real reasons why they were able to do the whole Kevin Durant, like you mentioned, trade is that they were able to get an extension with Steph before he blew up.
Yeah.
Because of that, they were able to have him on a team-friendly deal, right? Mm-hmm. It wasn't until, I think, after they won that first chip with KD, they were able to give him a $200 million contract for the first time, right? Yeah. And then I know he's on his second one currently, right? But what happened perfectly that timed in between that year was there was a TV deal, which helps with aiding the cap room that teams are afforded. Draymond, obviously being a second-round pick, is not garnishing big dollars. Klay, not garnishing big dollars. So these guys, yes, was drafted by this team, was still not guys that were, even at that point, able to truly maximize the money that they were supposed to get in their career. Who knows in the long run if these guys look back, if the Warriors ever considers trading one of these two, these guys look back and go like, I should have capitalized on making a little bit more money. But I think that they're happy with their current situation.
Me too.
And it literally is like I said, I don't think that it's luck that it fell on them. I think it's that the Warriors definitely knew what their cap situation looked like and could be like, and that's how they were opened the door to this type of situation. Now they're at a point where they've won 4 championships, which is increasingly putting your team's value up, which means that you have more profit margins to work with. Which means that if you're in the luxury by $200 million, $200+ million, it doesn't really matter to you because you've already won. You've already know what winning's like, and you've already seen the return on investment on winning. Yep. Joe Lacob's, an even more of a billionaire now because of this.
Oh yeah, easily for sure. That's like a team like the Warriors, they're not gonna care about any of that stuff. And it depends too of who your owners are, like who the owner of the team is. And we see even right now with the Suns they're trying to penny pinch a little bit more. And so it like teams die to try to get away from the luxury tax. But it just, I guess it really depends. And that's where I guess there is always a little bit of benefit of if your owner has some deep pockets. And as you see, Jeff's wearing his Mets jersey, and the Mets. I mean, even though it's a different league, but when your owner has deep pockets, it always helps.
Truly does.